You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baumbastic Podcast, presented by Inside Arkansas and hosted by Andrew Ellis. It is a Tuesday. It is May 13th. It's another beautiful day here in Northwest Arkansas. Hopefully, that remains the case throughout the weekend. We got the Tennessee Volunteers coming to town. Regular season finale in just 2 short days at Baum-Walker Stadium. Going to be a fun weekend. Looking forward to seeing what should be a pretty hectic atmosphere. Some high-stakes matchups. Arkansas got a chance to go ahead and clinch up a national seed. A lot is on the line for the Razorbacks this weekend against Tennessee, led by Tony Vitello. Going to be a real fun one. We look forward to talking more about that matchup tomorrow. Today on the show, we are going to talk a little bit about resume, NCAA tournament, seeding, projected field of 64 from D1 baseball. Our guys over there, shout out to Kendall Rogers and that crew, did a good job breaking it down earlier today. So we're going to dive into what things look like as we stand today, who Arkansas is projected to have in their regional, what their path to Omaha could possibly look like. And I look forward to doing that. Before that, I do want to just kind of run through a few common misconceptions that we've heard about Arkansas and what all they need to do this weekend to clinch a national seed. And can you actually be a host if you've lost 5 of your last 6 series or whatever the case may be? I hear a lot of misconceptions out there. I went ahead and did some research so that you don't have to. You don't have to look at this and break it down. And again, shout out to our guys at D1 Baseball. We're going to talk about their tournament projections. Also, shout out to Warren Nolan. Used both RPIs to kind of compare and contrast things. Both kind of paint the same picture. So we're going to talk about all of that and more. Do want to remind you guys that we are brought to you. Today's show is brought to you by Basis Health, our good friends over there. Basis Health is changing the way healthcare is delivered by providing mobile medical visits at the comfort of your home. A doctor will come to your home for urgent care, primary care, IV hydration, and more. Basis Health is there for you when and where you need them most. You can learn more at basishealth.org today. Really good people over there that know what they're doing. Let them come to you. Don't get it. You don't have to go to the doctor. I'm actually currently procrastinating a doctor visit myself. I don't have to worry about it because Basis Health will come to visit me in the comfort of my own home. And we appreciate them for all they do for us here at the Baumbastic Podcast and Inside Arkansas. So again, when we're talking about Arkansas and what they have to do, because we always love to play that game as sports fans, and it's a fun game to play. We did it during basketball season. How many does Arkansas need to? What do they need to finish? They need to finish 3-5. Do they need to finish 2-6? Like, will that clinch it? Do they need to split these last 2 games? If they beat this team, we always are kind of in our brains doing the math of what do we need to do? What is the absolute bare minimum we can do to reach our goals? That's how we view life. That's how we view the world. And a lot of times this time of year, when we're talking about resume and seeding and who all is going to go where and who all is going to do what, you hear a lot of things, and there are a lot of untrue things that you hear out there. One that I've heard a lot of lately, and it reminds me, during basketball season, we heard you can't make the tournament if you're under 500 in SEC play. God forbid, or just to completely ignore the fact that Arkansas has made the tournament now twice in the last 4 years as a team with a below 500 conference record. But that's a thing that people kept saying of like, oh, you can't make the tournament. If Arkansas doesn't get to 9 conference wins, they're not going to make it. We also heard that you had to get to 8 wins, but then we saw that also get proven wrong because you had a team like Texas make it into the NCAA tournament. And so there's a lot of misconceptions that go out there. And as is the case with whether it's resume or just your team overall, and I've said this a lot with the Arkansas baseball program, we look so deeply at ourselves, which is fair. I mean, we're Razorback fans, and I've always said baseball is meant to be consumed through the lens of your team, and you're supposed to watch and live and die with every pitch, and we can kind of figure out the rest later. And so I get it. But a lot of times we look so deeply at ourselves and we find all these flaws and things that we don't like. And we remember these games that we lost, and we remember, we look at what's going on and we focus on the negative, but you don't look around and realize everyone else is kind of going through the same thing. And then if you just compare this Razorback team and their resume, it stacks up pretty well. I want to make it as clear as I can here. If Arkansas wins one singular game this weekend against Tennessee, which would be a series loss, losing 2 out of 3. That would also be Arkansas, like I said, losing 5 of their last 6 series, 2 of which at home, 3 on the road, would be an all-out abject disaster, right? If that happens and Arkansas wins one single game in this upcoming 3-game series, Arkansas will have done enough to clinch a national seed. That will solidify it, that Arkansas is playing at home for as long as they can keep winning until they get to Omaha. And I say that for a lot of reasons. One, we're going to talk about the D1 baseball projection, which has Arkansas in a pretty good spot, not terribly dissimilar from the spot they had them in last week. And I said this, that I try to pride myself on not being an overreactor. I've said that a lot on the show. I try not to get too high or too low, although inevitably we all do at some point or another. But a lot of times, you win a game, everyone's like, man, this is the best team of all time. You lose a game, oh man, we're toast. We're not going to make the tournament. And the truth is never either one of those things. It's always somewhere in between. And so again, I think a lot of fans view it through the resume or through the lens of like, if you win, you're going to go up. And if you lose, you're going to go down. And so you start doing the math and you say, Arkansas is okay. They lose 2 games to LSU. Okay, so now they're going to go down. And now if you lose 2 more to Tennessee on top of that, now you're going down again. And all of a sudden, I saw a ranking that had Arkansas at number 8. So if they lose 1 more game, they're out, like that kind of thing. But it really isn't that way. And I think this past weekend against LSU was very much proof of that. Arkansas loses a series 2-3, one of which that they got run rolled in and played probably their worst game of the year. And at the end of it, you remain second in the SEC in conference standings. You remain top 5 in RPI. You remain number 5 in RPI. Your metrics all the way across the board remain in a very good spot. And in the D1 baseball projected field of 64, which projects the NCAA tournament, you go from number 2 to number 3. That's what happened this past weekend when Arkansas played LSU. And again, that's on the road against a team that is currently number 1 in the polls, a team that's got great metrics all the way across the board. Not exactly the same situation as Tennessee at home, because Tennessee's had their struggles here lately. They are not quite on the same RPI level as the Arkansas, Georgia, LSU's, Texas's of the world. It wouldn't be as inconsequential as the lost LSU last weekend. But I think people are making the mistake of thinking if Arkansas loses this series, it's going to eliminate them from national seed, or it's going to drop them far enough down to where they would no longer be a national seed. And I think a big part of that equation is if Arkansas is going to drop down, that means teams have to come up. And I think when you look at some of these teams that are right behind Arkansas, whether it's in RPI, strength of schedule, or just resume, or even in the projected field of 64, or in the D1 baseball rankings, you look at a lot of the teams below Arkansas and you think, okay, how could they pass up Arkansas? It's a lot more of an uphill battle than I think people seem to realize. And there's not that much time. Like some of these teams' resumes are kind of already set in stone. Arkansas has the benefit, weirdly enough, of always playing good teams every single weekend. So Arkansas is always, like if Arkansas goes out there and sweeps Tennessee, all of a sudden now Arkansas is like maybe the number 1 overall seed in the entire tournament. And that's not an exaggeration. Like Arkansas always has that opportunity to improve their resume because they're always playing good teams on the weekend. Some of these teams that are in contention with Arkansas do not have that same opportunity. And 2 of the teams that are in this same kind of realm, North Carolina and Florida State, we'll touch on them in a minute, are playing each other this weekend. And so they're going to kind of cancel out. But like I look at a team and we'll talk about, we'll run through all some of these. But if you just kind of look at the resume of where Arkansas is at, they're currently, like I said, number 5 in RPI. They're number 19 in strength of schedule, which may not sound like a crazy number. And hell, as Razorback fans, we're used to Arkansas having the literal toughest schedule in the country in every sport. That strength of schedule will actually go up a little bit after Arkansas plays Tennessee, because we've reached the point of Arkansas' schedule, like we've said, where now you're playing the big boys week in and week out. So even playing the number 15 team in RPI in Tennessee at home will give Arkansas a little bit of bump. So the strength of schedule will probably finish somewhere in that 15 to 20 range. But when you compare it to some of these other teams, it compares pretty favorably. Arkansas, by the way, 30-3 at home, 8-7 on the road, and 3-1 in neutral locations, which is not a record that's going to like blow you away. But when you kind of look at it, that's pretty much what a lot of, like, I think Texas or Auburn is the number 1 RPI right now in the country, or number 1, number 2. And I think they're like 10-10 away from home or something like that. So like you if you're above 500 on the road with a little bit of a sample size like that, that usually actually is among the best in the country. And so you look at Arkansas's resume, by the way, I mean, if you're looking at, we always talk about the quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, all that. Arkansas is 12-8 against quad 1 opponents. There are only 5 teams in the country who have 12 quad 1 wins. Arkansas is 1-0 against quad 2. I don't know how that happened. They're 7-2 against quad 3, and then 21-1 against quad 4. The only loss you could make a case would be a bad loss. That one quad 4 loss is Missouri State at home in a midweek game. We know midweek games do not matter that much in terms of the big picture. Also, that Missouri State team is going to make this tournament. They're probably going to be in someone's regional. Hell, they might be in Arkansas's regional. And so If that's your worst loss, you're in a pretty good spot. So what Arkansas has done has put together a pretty complete, pretty well-rounded resume. Like there's not much you can point to. Like they've played a ton of top teams, as many quad one opponents as anyone in the country. They've won games on the road. They've won series on the road. Hell, Vanderbilt's one of these teams that's going to end up being maybe a top 5 national seed. Arkansas has a series sweep over that Vanderbilt team. That's a nice one to have in your back pocket. Of course, the sweep over Texas helps too. The series win on the road against Ole Miss. I said in the moment, it's going to age really well. It has aged really well. That's a top 20 road series win. That'll certainly help you. Arkansas's built up a lot of goodwill. They don't have bad losses, home, a road, neutral. Like they have a good mix of pretty much everything. You could literally, if you just look at the national seeds from the last decade, they all have resumes that look very similar to what Arkansas has right now. And so, again, I understand what have we done lately? Oh, we've been losing a few series here and there lately. We've lost some close games against some tough teams, some one-run games to Georgia. You lose a one-run game against LSU on Friday. Like you had some tough outcomes. And so you think you're like doing this right here. But really, in terms of resume, in terms of RPI standing, and in terms of SEC standing, Arkansas's really kind of stayed here. They've kind of tread water here these last 4 weeks, which I think herein lies kind of the big misconception is, we view it through, hey, you win, you go up, you lose, you go down. But the reality is if you win, you go up. And if you lose to a good team, you're really kind of just treading water. And so Arkansas, and by the way, I know it may not seem like a big deal. The fact that Arkansas has not been swept is a big deal. I believe Arkansas is one of only 2 teams in the entire country, or at least in the SEC, that have not been swept. And weirdly enough, I think Tennessee might be the one team that has not been swept. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. I know LSU has been swept. Obviously, we know Texas has been swept. Obviously, we know that Vanderbilt has been swept. Georgia was swept by Texas. Like all these teams that are Arkansas's in this conversation with have some blind spots on their resume as well. And by the way, the D1 baseball projected field of 64 that we're going to talk about here in a second has 6 SEC teams in the top 8 national seeds. That's the second week in a row they've done that. There were 5 last year. There's usually about 5 SEC teams. It looks like this could be a year where we get 6 of the top 8 national seeds come from the SEC. And if that is the criteria we're looking at, and again, I'm going off of D1 baseball. They're kind of the cream of the crop. They're the premier outlet in college baseball. If you can find 6 SEC teams, and I'll go ahead and pull up the SEC standings here. Obviously Texas is up there. Texas's resume is kind of solidified at this point. Like Texas may not be the number 1 overall seed, but they are the safest, I would imagine, of all these teams. Believe it or not, LSU needs to probably to win a game or 2 just to go ahead and clinch up their national seed as well. I think Arkansas is in that same kind of boat, but you look at it. So again, this is why I said, if Arkansas wins one singular game, they will have clinched a national seed. If Arkansas were to win one singular game, that would be a 19-11 finish. By the way, no team since 2018. 2017 Kentucky was the last team to win 19 SEC games and not be a national seed. And that was a little bit of a unique circumstance. The SEC had a little bit of a weird down year there. They ended up being the number 10 overall team in the tournament. Arkansas that year was number 12. So if you get to that 19 win threshold, that's like a 90, like that alone right there. That's like a 99% chance to finish. And then you look at it, if Arkansas is 19-11, look at all these teams below them. How the hell are you going to find 6 teams that deserve a national seed over Arkansas? One of which being that Vanderbilt team at 16-11. Like maybe they sweep this weekend. If Arkansas and Vandy finish at 19-11 each, how the hell is Arkansas going to not be a national seed over Vanderbilt? Again, that's a simplistic way of looking at it. But you see my point that it's not as cut and dry of like, oh, if Arkansas loses a series, they're in trouble. You look at it, one win would actually put Arkansas in a very, very good situation. I think it would be very hard to find 6 SEC teams, especially because, look, some of these teams are going to play, a lot of these teams are not playing each other. Everyone's playing a tough opponent this weekend in the SEC other than whoever's playing Missouri, although, hell, you never know these days. So there's always, in the reality, it's not like all these teams are going to sweep and Arkansas is going to get swept and it's going to be that simple. So that's why I just feel like if Arkansas wins one game, it really puts them in a very good spot. And you combine that with the resume, the RPI, because again, if Arkansas wins one game, you get a little bit of a bump there. If you lose 2 to a team in Tennessee that's top 15 in RPI, that is not going to take you from number 5 RPI to number 10 RPI. And even if Arkansas was RPI number 10, they'd still be in a decent spot. Let's look at some of these teams outside of the SEC who are right behind Arkansas in the resume standpoint. Because again, a lot of times when people say, if Arkansas loses this series, they're in trouble, that's assuming that some of these teams go up. I don't think people have really looked at some of these resumes and realistically looked at it and think, does this team have a chance to really jump Arkansas in the standings, in the national seed race there, whatever the case may be? So RPI number 6 is an Oregon State team, which is a little bit of a fascinating team because they are independent. They do not have a baseball conference. So they've been just kind of playing anyone they can find to play them. What's weird about Oregon State, their strength of schedule is 30th in the country. And the reason it's so high and the reason their RPI is number 6, almost all of Oregon State's schedule has not been at home. They have played an insane amount of road and neutral games. Again, they don't have a conference. They don't have an actual schedule. They just had to go to wherever they could to play series. And so it kind of finagled the numbers to where their RPI is number 6. And typically, historically, if your RPI is number 6, you're pretty much either a lock as a national seed or right there on that mix. Oregon State, it's a little bit weird because they have just such a unique resume with so many road and neutral games. And as you guys know, if you follow the net rankings and FPI, BPI, whatever it is, road and neutral games always give you a little bit of a weighted bump. And the D1, by the way, the D1 baseball crew does not have Oregon State as a national seed. So they're kind of calling that bluff of the RPI. But Oregon State is a team that is sitting right there behind Arkansas. They are 5-8 against quad 1 teams. And I just told you Arkansas was 12-8 against quad 1 teams. Oregon State is 5-8. So if Arkansas goes 1-2 against Tennessee, I don't know how you can be 100% confident in saying that Oregon State is going to jump them in RPI and also go from not a national seed currently projected by D1 baseball to being not only a national seed but over Arkansas. I think that's kind of a tough one there. Number 8 in RPI is Alabama, who I just showed you is 15-12 in SEC play. Not that Alabama's not a good team. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team. They should probably be a host. I'd say most definitely going to be a host. I think they are currently the number 14 overall seed in the D1 baseball national seed projections. If Arkansas goes 1-2, are you sure a Bama team that is guaranteed to finish below Arkansas in the SEC standings, are you sure they're going to jump Arkansas? Like I don't really think so. And I don't think you even think that if you really think about it. Next up, you have Florida State, who is number 9 in the RPI. And Florida State is currently projected to be a top 5 national seed. They are the number 1 team in the ACC right now, which the ACC, there's a big gap between the SEC and the other conferences when it comes to baseball. The ACC is without a doubt the closest thing you can find to it. And there's maybe even bigger gap between the ACC and whoever the third best conference is at this point. But the ACC does have some teams in this mix, and Florida State, I would imagine, I don't have to imagine it. Florida State is the highest rated, the highest ranked ACC team. They just beat Clemson in a series last week. So they've kind of got that in their back pocket. Florida State, I feel like, has done enough. They're 16-8 in ACC play. Their strength of schedule is 38. So a little bit, Arkansas is at 19. They're a good bit below Arkansas, but not really bad. They're 11-7 against quad 1 teams, which is pretty impressive for an ACC team that doesn't get a ton of these opportunities. For them to be 11-7 against quad 1 bodes well for them. They will be finishing the season against North Carolina. And now we'll talk about North Carolina second here. I guess I can just talk about them together. That series is going to be interesting. And I think what you have here is 2 teams that are basically going to cancel out. Because North Carolina, by the way, they are number 11 in RPI, Florida State at number 9. Whoever wins that series, I feel like would have to be taken seriously as a national seed and as a team that if you're thinking about teams that could maybe jump Arkansas, they would maybe be in that mix. Here's the only problem with that. And the more I'm looking at it, North Carolina is 16-10 in ACC play. And now they're about to play Florida State. So obviously, you go out there and you sweep Florida State and you finish 19-10. That's going to be a pretty loud statement. Or maybe you take the series, you're 18-11. Like that also would bode pretty well for you. But North Carolina at RPI number 11, I don't know if even if they beat Florida State 2 out of 3, I don't know if it would necessarily result in them catapulting all the way up to above Arkansas. I really think all it would do is take Florida State, who's currently projected as the number, 4 or 5 national seed, and it would probably take Florida State down a little bit if North Carolina wins this series against Florida State and Arkansas wins 1 game this weekend. Arkansas would wind up with the same SEC record as those guys have in their ACC record. SEC, ACC, did I say that right? And so it's like, again, and we all know the SEC is the much more powerful conference, much better top to bottom. I think it would be pretty hard for you to make a case for both of those teams. Maybe if Florida State goes out there and sweeps North Carolina, you could say, all right, now Florida State's firmly above Arkansas. They're one of those teams that passed them. And again, if Arkansas is going to not be a national seed, you're probably going to need about 4 to 6 teams to pass them this weekend, is basically what you're tasking and what everyone is assuming will happen. And I think that's just a very dangerous assumption. Another team there in this mix, by the way, North Carolina is 7-5 versus quad 1 team. So not even as good of an overall resume as that Florida State team. The team that's right between them in RPI is UCLA, who is RPI number 10. They are currently 3-7 against quad 1 teams. Have not played a ton of great competition over there in the Big Ten. There's a lot of teams in the Big Ten that, for lack of a better term, stink. So UCLA has kind of been beaten up on some cans in Big Ten play. Like I said, 3-7 against the quad 1. They're currently 10 in RPI, and they finished the season at home against Northwestern, who has a lower RPI than Missouri. And I hope you heard that correctly. Now, Missouri did get a huge bump in RPI. They jumped like 47 spots or something crazy like that because you beat A&M on the road. So now Missouri's like 125 or 130 in RPI. Northwestern is below them, below Missouri in RPI, and UCLA plays them at home. So again, I just don't see a path to how UCLA is RPI number 10. They're going to, even if they sweep Northwestern, they're going to jump all the way up to RPI number 5 and be above Arkansas, who would have also just kind of held serve at home against the Tennessee squad. Again, I think people keep saying these things without really looking at it. And these are just the teams that are directly behind Arkansas. I mean, there's other teams in this mix. Coastal Carolina is RPI number 12. They're 4-5 against quad 1 teams. Their strength of schedule is number 67. They're finishing the year against Old Dominion, who's 104 in RPI. Not exactly a clear path for them to go out there and jump Arkansas. You also have teams like Florida, who's, I think they're top 15 in RPI. They have a below 500 SEC record, although they did beat Arkansas in a series at home. Clemson, I think they've kind of fallen out of this mix as well. Tennessee at this point has fallen out of this mix. TCU's another team right there. Like all these teams who are in that, 9 to 16 range, some of them have literally no chance of jumping into that top 7 or 8 in the RPI and the metrics and in that national seed conversation. And so again, I remind you, I just don't think it's safe to assume, hey, if Arkansas loses a series against Tennessee, there's going to be 6 teams that all have shitty resumes. They're all just going to jump over Arkansas. I think that's a little bit of a bold assumption there. And by the way, Arkansas in I guess that would have been 2022, when Arkansas won 18 SEC games and wound up not hosting at all. And they went from, are they going to make a national seed, to are they going to host? Oh, no, they're not hosting at all. I think that year skews the way that it works in a lot of people's brains. Because what happened was Arkansas lost their last 2 series of that season. They went 1-5 to finish SEC play. And they got beat by like 20 by Alabama in the regular season finale. They also lost their 2 games in Hoover, got run ruled in one of those, I'm pretty sure. Actually, that's a lie. They didn't get run ruled, but finished the year on such a downward spiral and then wound up not hosting, to where I think people see that and they think that's a realistic thing that can happen any year. And it's about to happen this year because we're about to lose 5 of our last 6 series. I would just remind you that team that I was talking about in 2022 was 41st in RPI by the end of the regular season, by the end of their run in Hoover. Not only is Arkansas not going to be 41st in RPI, I think Arkansas could literally lose these 3 games against Tennessee and lose in Hoover. I don't think Arkansas would fall below 10th in RPI. So comparing these 2 things, that was a year where it was right after COVID. It was hard to schedule things. Arkansas scheduled a bunch of 2-game midweek series. Their non-conference just didn't work out. And they beat all the bad teams and lost all the good teams in SEC play. And the end result was a resume that was way down there, a lot closer to like the A&Ms of the world. 41st in RPI, by the way, that's what that 22 team for Arkansas was. If you look at who's 41st in RPI right now, it's a lot of teams that are either 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament or on the bubble, and even some teams that aren't even going to be projected into the field. The team who is currently 41st in RPI is Xavier, who in this D1 baseball field of 64 we're about to talk about is listed as one of the last 4 teams in. And so again, that 18-12 conference record in 2022, which matches the 18-12 record they had in 2018, not exactly the same thing from a resume standpoint. And I want people to understand this year's Arkansas baseball team's resume is a lot more in line with the 2021 team that was number 1 overall, the 2023 team that was number 3 overall, last year's team that was number 5 overall. The resume, the strength of schedule, the RPI, all of that is a lot more. The quad 1 wins are a lot more in line with these Razorback teams that were national seeds without a shadow of a doubt. But without further ado, let me. I don't have it pulled up for you, but I'm going to go through this D1 baseball field of 64, and we're just going to kind of talk to it and react. So, like I said, last 4 in. Actually, I lied. That Xavier team is the first team out. Their first 4 out. You have Xavier, Cal Poly, Texas A&M, and a Michigan team that Arkansas beat earlier this season. The next 4 out would be Creighton, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, and UC Santa Barbara. Last 4 teams in on this projection has UT, Rio Grande Valley, Iowa, Virginia, who started the year at number 2 overall in the polls, and Western Kentucky. Fascinating that Texas A&M and Virginia were number 1 and number 2 preseason. One of them's the first 4 out. One of them's last 4 in, and that's just where they're at. I think they're right next to each other in RPI as well, so a little bit of poetic justice, I guess. The number 1 overall seed in this projection is the Texas Longhorns, which has the UC Rio Grande Valley in their tournament as the 3 seed. Oral Roberts sitting as the 4 seed. Dallas Baptist is the 2 seed there. That's the Austin Regional. They're lined up with the number 16 overall seed, the West Virginia Mountaineers, who have Tennessee in their regional in this projection. So Tennessee Volunteers, we were talking about them on the show on Inside Arkansas Live today. They've fallen completely out of the hosting picture. Of course, they have a chance to get right back into it. If Tennessee goes out there and beats Arkansas this weekend, they would certainly lock up a host spot. But as it stands today, it is not 100% sure at all that Tennessee is going to be hosting. They might have to go on the road to start postseason play. You've also got that Virginia team in there at number 3, and Holy Cross is the 4 seed. So West Virginia, the number 16, the final hosting team, gets Tennessee, the defending national champs, and Virginia, the preseason number 2 team, who also went to Omaha last year. That is underachieved, but like that is about as brutal of a regional as you can get as a host. Moving on down, LSU is now the number 2 overall team in this tournament projection. They've got Miami, Southeast Louisiana, and Bryant in their regional, so a little bit of a cakewalk outside of Miami. They would be lined up with the Raleigh, North Carolina regional of NC State, which has Florida as the number 2 seed in it, with Connecticut and High Point also in there. I would imagine Florida would be heavily favored to win that regional. And LSU versus Florida Super would be pretty exciting. And I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you would really like for LSU and Florida to play each other in the Supers, because those are 2 teams that I think, like, if you're looking at matchups, you wouldn't be thrilled about facing in the College World Series finals. You could get 2 of them to face each other in the Supers. That would actually be pretty ideal there. So I would sign up for that. And speaking of potential SEC matchups in the NCAA tournament, the Fayetteville Regional, as the number 3 overall seed for the Arkansas Razorbacks, would be hosting Kansas, Western Kentucky, and Wright State. Kansas, by the way, last week when we did this exercise, was listed as the number 3 seed in the Fayetteville Regional. They have now moved up to number 2, and you get Western Kentucky and Wright State in there. I'm not saying this is like, no regional is easy. I'm not saying that Arkansas couldn't get caught in this regional. I think this would be about as much as you could ask for as a Razorback fan, although I will say last year's Fayetteville Regional was about as close to a cakewalk as you can get, and Arkansas fumbled that one, so I don't want to speak too soon. But I think Hog fans would probably agree this would be a fair regional. Kansas, you would have that kind of storyline of, hey, we ended your season in basketball. We beat you in a bowl game in football a couple years ago, a few times. And now we could beat you. We could end your season in baseball. We also took Tavian Josenberger from you. We took Stone Hewlett from you. We took Jack Wagner from you. How about that? That would be nice, from that standpoint. And the regional that this Fayetteville regional would be lined up with, the number 14 overall seed, the Alabama Crimson Tide, who Arkansas has not played this season, which is kind of unique because they played as division rivals for so long. So it's kind of funny that Arkansas and Alabama have not played. So it'd be kind of cool to face them in a super. Their regional, the Tuscaloosa regional, would be hosting Southern Miss, Arizona State, and that Missouri State team that I referenced earlier. So I don't know how you guys would feel about that. Alabama's a good, respectable SEC team. You're not going to face anybody that stinks in the supers. I think Arkansas fans would probably sign up for that matchup, for that path to Omaha. It's a battle-tested Alabama squad. Maybe you'd rather a team not from the SEC that hasn't played as good a competition, but I also think there are some paths to victory there that Arkansas could exploit. We'll run through the rest of these quick because I'm sure a lot of you only care about the Arkansas side, but you got Florida State as the number 4 overall seed. They've got Mississippi State in their regional. They would be lined up with the Fort Worth regional, the TCU Horned Frogs, who Arkansas, of course, has a win over this season. So you've got TCU, UTSA, Oklahoma, who has fallen to a 3 seed in the projections. Oklahoma was looking at maybe hosting not too long ago. Now they've fallen off a good bit. I can't remember who they play. I feel like they play maybe Texas to finish the season. So not an easy series there for Oklahoma, and Texas needs a win as well. A little bit of a fall from grace for them. They would be in the Fort Worth regional, so that's a little bit of a fun one. The winner would go on to face the winner of likely Florida State versus Mississippi State, who is coachless and the number 3 seed in this regional. Moving on down, you have the number 5 overall seed Vanderbilt lined up with the number 12 overall seed Oregon State. Oregon State, by the way, has Kentucky, USC, and Sacramento State, the Fighting Vahiva Loys, as their 4 seed. So that's a little bit of an interesting regional. Vanderbilt would have Louisville, East Tennessee State, and Tennessee Tech in their regional. Your number 6 overall seed would be Georgia, who, of course, has a series win over Arkansas. They've got Georgia Tech, Stetson, and Rhode Island in their regional, lined up with the Los Angeles regional with UCLA at number 11. That would be a fun super regional right there. They've got Arizona, UC Irvine, San Diego in their regional. Auburn is the number 7 overall national seed, according to D1 Baseball. I'm a little bit surprised by how low that is. Like, I think Auburn, from an RPI standpoint, is up there in the top 3. They've been on a tear lately. They've got some really good series wins. They swept LSU. Like, that's big time. They also were swept by Texas. But Auburn's been on a tear here lately. A little surprised to see them so low at number 7. They would have Duke, Troy, and Fairfield in their regional. And they'd be lined up with the Conway, South Carolina regional, which features Coastal Carolina, Clemson, Cincinnati, and Yale. By the way, I should point this out. I meant to bring this up when I talked about Coastal earlier. I know a lot of times Hog fans, we view it through the lens of like the NCAA hates us, the SEC hates us, sports are rigged and they're rigged against us. And honestly, in most cases, you've got a case. I will say in this particular context where the NCAA is selecting host sites for the NCAA tournament, Arkansas is going to get the benefit of the doubt here. Like, Coastal Carolina is currently projected as the number 10 overall seed, one of the first non-national seed hosts. They would be one of those teams that you're kind of worried about. Could they jump you? Do you really think the NCAA, if they can have their pick and it's 50-50, that they're going to have a super regional in Conway, South Carolina over Baum-Walker Stadium, one of the best venues in the country? I really think Arkansas is, like, I'm not saying the NCAA is going to rig it for Arkansas, but if there is an opportunity, you look at some of these other teams and these potential host sites, I think Arkansas getting a super is extremely likely. The final 2 regional projections we have here, the Chapel Hill, North Carolina regional, they are the number 8 overall seed. And again, North Carolina finishes the series, the regular season with a series against Florida State. So they're kind of won the monitor here. They're at number 8. They would be hosting Ole Miss, Iowa, and Central Connecticut, some familiar names in that regional there. They would be lined up with the Eugene, Oregon regional, who is led by Mason Neville, who leads the country in home runs. They would have Wake Forest, Kansas State, and Nevada in their regional. Another familiar face also with Kansas State. So a lot of fun potential NCAA tournament regionals. The more I like every single projection I look at, I find like 6 potential matchups that I'm like, ooh, that could be interesting. That could be interesting. And of course, these things always change week to week, but no matter how it shakes out, there's going to be some awesome regionals. There's going to be some awesome potential super matchups. And the path for Arkansas, honestly, I'm not saying that like these weekend's games don't matter. But I think if Arkansas's number 3 and they fall to number 7, I don't think their draw is going to be all that terrible. It's going to be all that, more difficult compared to it. Like, for instance, I mean, Auburn is currently number 7. Like, say Arkansas and Auburn switch spots and Arkansas's path to Omaha featured Duke, Troy, and Fairfield. Like, would you guys be like panicked there and you're lined up with the Coastal Carolina regional? Like, would that be the regional, like the draw where you're like, oh man, can't believe we lost that last series of the regular season. Now we got to play Coastal in the supers. It's like, honestly, like, you can make an argument. You get a better draw if you're lower. Like, a lot of times they kind of finagle these things. And so we'll see how it shakes out. But I did want to kind of just dive through the NCAA tournament. I hope this wasn't a boring episode where you guys are just listening to me read off team names and cite numbers that you don't care about. You really just want to know what's Arkansas got to do to get a national seed. And I'm telling you, one win this weekend, that will do the job for Arkansas. And I think if you guys really look at the numbers and break it all down objectively, I think most would certainly agree. There's not really a case to be made for all of these teams passing up Arkansas. But who knows? You get swept against Tennessee at home this weekend. Maybe all bets are off. Maybe you go into Hoover kind of needing to do something. Who knows? But again, Arkansas remains in a good spot. And the closer we get, man, the more excited I am for this NCAA tournament. It's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, but also a lot of fun. And I look forward to breaking it all down with you as we continue to move along. Tomorrow, we will be back with a full series preview of the Tennessee matchup. Did not do a full deep dive breakdown because I wound up getting Kendall Rogers on Thursday, which is usually the day before the series. That's usually when I do the full on series preview. But what was I supposed to do? Say, hey, Kendall Rogers, actually, let me bump you to Tuesday. Let me bump you to Wednesday, buddy. No, I got him on Thursday, and we talked about the LSU Arkansas series a little bit, but we're going to get back to a little bit of the more in-depth numbers comparison, break down the starters, all that fun stuff for Tennessee versus Arkansas tomorrow. Should be a fun edition of the Baumbastic Podcast. Hope you learned something here today. Hope you feel a little bit better about Arkansas's NCAA tournament hopes in terms of being a national seed. Appreciate you guys for always hanging out on the Baumbastic Podcast. Leave us a like, leave us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we're getting really close to 10K. And when we get to 10K, world hunger will be solved. So make sure we get there. Make sure you tell your friends to help subscribe as well. Seriously, appreciate you guys for listening. As always, it's been Andrew Ellis with another brilliant edition of the Baumbastic Podcast.